Welcome back. This is Coding Atlas and we'll be continuing with our Python series in this video. So in this video, we'll be talking about variables. Variables are like kind of identifier that you use to identify a specific kind of data. So variables are identifiers that are attached to a certain data that you can use to identify that data in the course of your programming. In our last video, we talked about input. We talked about input functions. So we can pass a prompt to the user to provide an input. Let's say, what is your name? So we are passing that prompt to the user to provide input. But as soon as you run this code, there is no way that you can make reference to the input that the user provided. So you cannot work with that. So as soon as the user provides his or her name, let's say we have a female user now, we can call her Jane. So as soon as the user provided the input is dissipated after executing the code. So in situations like this, how do you identify whatever input that is being passed by the user? You can work with that using variables. And to define your variables, you just write out the name of the variable. Just like as you are asking for the username, there you can say the name of the data that is going to pass by the user at this level is going to be called username. So you can say username then equal to. So you are assigning whatever data that is being passed by the user here, you are assigning it to the variable of username. You can call this variable whatever name you like. You can call it name. You can call it user, whatever name you like. So the naming of your variable is totally left to you. It is your choice. You determine whatever name you want to call your variable. So you can say name, you can assign this data to name, and then after name you can have hobby. Okay, so you can say input, then you can pass the prompts to the user as what is your hobby? What is your hobby? All right, instead of having both input on the same line, you can now have, you can say print. So you can say your name is, then we can concatenate this with name. That is the input that the user provided at this point. Then you can have another concatenation here. Then we have a string. Your hobby is, then you can have another concatenation there. So we have hobby. All right. Rather than having these two inputs at the same line, so we can use the variable to represent whatever input that the user provided at both levels of the code execution. So if you run this now, you run this, you have the prompt of what is your name. I can say my name is Smith. All right. And then what is your hobby? I can say hiking. All right. So you have your name is Smith. Your hobby is hiking. Without variable, writing something like this, you have to go in this direction. You have your name is this, then you have your inputs at this line. So we have this, and then your hobby is this. All right. So without variable, you are going to have something like this. You see how easy it is that variable makes your coding to look like, and how more readable it is. So with this now, this line might be a little bit more complex for an absolute beginner to interpret, but having something like this, the code is more readable and easy to work with. And this is just a simple illustration. If you have code that is running to thousands of lines, embedding functions inside of another function here like this can be a nightmare. So we have variables to our rescue in situations like this. Another thing that you should take note about variables is that variables can be changed. The value of each variable can be changed. For example, you can say, let's comment this out. For example, you can say name is John. You can assign John to name at the first level. Don't mind me. I'm still getting used to my new keyboard. So I'm having my heart in place of my double quotes, and I'm having my hashtag in place of my pounds. So I'm still getting used to the keyboard. All right, so I might be having a few typos here and there. All right, so variables can be changed. For example, at this line, we have the name of John assigned to variable of name, or let's say user, so we are not confused with name. So we have the string of John assigned to the variable user. So at this level now, we can print user at this level, and user is going to give us John. After that, you can assign another name to user. So you can say user now is what? You can say user is James, and you can print same user. So at both level of the code, we are going to have different values of user because variable can be changed, and as you can see here, they have been changed. Let's run this now. So you can see at the first line user is John, and on the second line user has been changed to James. Alright, before we round up this video, I want us to talk about few rules that has to do with variables. The first rule is that your variable should be readable. This rule is not cast into stone, but it is always advisable that your variables should be readable. It should be easily interpretable to others that can come across your code. So as you can, here you can say your user, maybe you can say your user is X, or you can say your user is XY. And later you can say, if you want to read your code, you might be confused that what is the meaning of XY. If another person is accessing your code, the person might be confused that what is XY. But if you use user, then the person reading the code can easily interpret that, okay, this is the name of a user, this is standing for a user. So the first rule of your variable is that your variable should be readable. Another rule is that your variable must not have space in between. For example, if you want to call this username, you cannot put space inside of your variable. That is not permissible. Let me comment this out. Talking about rules now, so we actually don't need that. So your variable must not have space in between. If you need space in between of your variable, you can use underscore for that. If you put space, you are going to run into error. If you run this now, then you have syntax error, invalid syntax. So rather than having space, you can use underscore. The next thing is number cannot start your variable. You cannot start the name of your variable with a number. For example, maybe you have a list of users. Maybe you have the first user to be, let's say, John. I say John, and then you have the second user to be James. Right, so you can say this is user 1, you can say this is user 2. This is permissible. You can have numbers at the end of your variable name, but you are not allowed to put number at the beginning of your variable name. This is not permissible. This is going to run into syntax error. This is going to result into syntax error. So you can only use numbers at the end. You are not permitted to use numbers at the beginning of your variable. So you have syntax error, invalid decimal literal. Whenever you need numbers in your variable name, you are permitted to use it at the end and not at the beginning of your variable name. Right. And the last thing I want us to take note of in naming your variable is that you should take note of not using Python keywords. You know, we have keywords like print, we have keywords like input. We have talked about those functions. So you don't use Python keywords in naming your variable. You cannot say this is print. That is going to cause confusion. Normally, Python has a function that is called print, and now you are assigning a name to the word of print. So later, if you want to invoke the print function, that is going to cause some kind of error, because normally this is supposed to be a function. Now you are invoking this variable, which is the name of John. This is going to cause confusion. So let's say, okay, we can say this is hello world. Let's run this. You can see we have a type error. String object is not callable. Here we've assigned a string value to print. Now you want to call the print function with the hello world argument. So that is not possible. Should avoid using Python keyword in your variable names. All right, for now, that's that for variables. I'll see you in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Peace out.